Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Today's topic is by request, and that is, how do you know if a UPG is legitimate and reliable or not? Well, first of all, I need to explain what a UPG is. UPG stands for Unverified Personal Gnosis. Gnosis coming from the Greek for to know. And this is when you get a sense, typically about a deity, and this is through your own meditation or reflection, and you just don't know if this is you imagining things or if you just received a genuine message from above. Well, Kemetic How-To to the rescue. I'm going to start with 3 examples of UPGs in the Kemetic sphere of things, and we're going to apply a short checklist to each one to see if they're legit. So your examples. A. The goddess Isis, or Aset, is really pushy and doesn't take no for an answer. B. Bast likes things with a mother-of-pearl finish. C. Osiris really has a thing for pine trees. Let's start with our checklist. 1. What does the historical record say? In other words, read. And read print sources, not just online. The problem is, if you just Google it, you look down the web pages and you're going to figure out that a lot of things get copy-pasted. You're going to find the same text, repeated in a bunch of different places. If you read either physical books, yes, real live dead trees, or if you go online and you look at academic journals, they might be online, but they have a mirror that is a print source. And the nice thing is you have academia. It is a free website, and you can get things there that are peer-reviewed. You can also, if you have access through a university or a public library, you might be able to go to JSTOR or something like that, and you can find things that are not, again, copy-pasted, to infinity and beyond. 2. What do other pagans say? Now, if you're going to do this, make sure you get a broad sample, and fortunately with deities like Isis / Aset and Anubis, aka Inipu, I kind of have a pet peeve against Yinipu, but it's all talking about the same deity, and you can get a broad spectrum across pagan traditions for popular deities like that. And, if you're trying to find out things on Hatmehit, you're probably going to be restricted to Kemetic Reconstructionist groups. But try to get a broad sample, and not just from, one Facebook group or something. Because an individual community can sort of develop their own interpretation of a deity. Or another way that you could look at it is that the deity might take on a specific aspect when working with this group. Other traditions have called this wraith energy, and things like that. So it may be true for a specific group, but not necessarily, across the board. And you really want to try and get, kind of a broad feel for what's going on when you talk to other pagans. But that's not, don't let that be the end-all be-all. Remember, first we're reading, then we're kind of seeing what other pagans say, but finally, and most importantly, what does your own experience say? Dig into your own personal history, too, because there might be something in your family story, something from your lifetime, that factors into your unverified personal gnosis. Or you might have some personal feelings involved that could be influencing your perception at the moment. But either way, self-knowledge is a worthwhile part of your spiritual practice, and it's a worthwhile part of this process of learning, especially learning how to work with different deities. So let's apply this threefold checklist to our examples, starting with A. Aset is really pushy. Okay, history tells us that Isis slash Aset could be associated with royalty. But in myths, she also had compassion for the common person, because you have the myth of Isis and the seven scorpions, and she was shunned by a rich woman but taken in by a poor woman. But then she had compassion on the rich woman's son when her seven scorpion guards got offended at the rich lady being so rude, and so they went and stung the rich lady's son. Well, Isis was forgiving, and she healed the rich woman's son. She does take on an active role in other myths, especially when it comes to her own son Horus. But is that pushy? It's a matter of interpretation. Some people point to the myth where Isis finagles Ra's secret name out of him by making a serpent and then coercing him into giving her his secret name. But the funny thing is, you dig a little further, there are parallels to that story. There's a similar version involving Horus and another falcon deity named Nemti. And Nemti begs Horus to heal him, and Horus says, well, give me your true name. And Nemti's true name is not a very flattering one. So, does that say more about Aset or about maybe a trope in Egyptian myth? So that's something that you can start to understand as you do more reading. Now, as for surveying other pagans, this particular UPG came from a Kemetic group. But if you go outside of that Kemetic group, you have much different impressions that people give of Isis slash Aset. They describe her as being loving and approachable, having a sense of humor. So that may be something very specific to that group. Now, each person is going to have a different take when they go to work with a deity, like Aset, Isis. My own experience has been, I don't work with her very closely, but that's because, by and large, I kind of have a thing against moms, and nothing personal to all the moms out there. This has to do with mine. But you know what? Isis knows that. And so she's not insistent with me at all. If anything, she knows, okay, I'm not going to, treat you that way. Other people have already done, terrible enough. And what I have noticed is that Isis has a very eloquent and classic way of speaking. And it's something you hear it in your head. It's not like, and the goddess said. It's not like that. You will hear it in your head as if, you're hearing, a line from a character or something like that. Isis has a very eloquent way of speaking. I would not call that pushy, just dignified. So after surveying history, surveying other pagans, and then surveying our own experience, the verdict here is probably not. So let's go on to our next UPG. Bast likes mother of pearl. Egyptology sources don't say much about Neker, aka mother of pearl. But if you research mother of pearl itself, you find out that it's used in modern Middle Eastern musical instruments and mosaics as a decorative pattern. And in Nubia, historically, that's another place where Bast was venerated. And a popular material for decorating headdresses and clothing in Nubia was mica, which is another naturally iridescent material. So that's not direct evidence, but very promising. Secondly, I first saw this UPG on a Kemetic website years ago, but it actually came up during a recent live stream that we did. And someone had asked for a fortune from Bast, and the fortune mentioned oyster shells. So, that's very much arguing in favor of our UPG here. Now, in my own experience, Bast really seems to like green, which is one of the highlights in mother of pearl coloring. So, verdict here, Sounds legit. And C, our last UPG. Osiris really has an affinity for pine trees. Okay, historically Osiris has an association with tamarisk, also known as salt cedar, which is an evergreen tree. And in one version of his myth, his coffin was found in a tree trunk in Byblos that had grown up around it. So think like the cedars of Lebanon. So there's already a conifer connection here, if you will. Informal queries with fellow Kemetics so far have agreed that pine does seem to have an Osirian vibe to it. Now, 3, as for personal experience, I've grown up around pine trees. Specifically, Pinus taeda, the loblolly pine. They're all over the South. But it wasn't until this year, when my grandmother died, that I found out the pine trees in her backyard, in the house that she lived in when I was growing up, had been dug up by her and her sister from an old graveyard. So they were graveyard pines. And not only is there the family lore about graveyard pines, even today, evergreens are often found in cemeteries as symbols of eternal life. So, verdict? Sounds legit. And this last example also illustrates what I would call a modern adaptation. Because here in the New World, you can find tamarisk, but it's an invasive species. It was brought to the New World after the Dust Bowl, because people were thinking, oh goodness, we've got to find some way to make sure that we don't have more dust storms. Let's plant things as wind breaks, things that are drought resistant, and one of the things that they planted was tamarisk. Well, there's a problem with tamarisks. They tend to choke off everything around them and compete with native species, and so now it's like, oh gee, maybe we shouldn't have incorporated them. But that being what it is, Osiris is also perfectly capable of manifesting in the native landscape. What's to say that Osiris of the New World doesn't manifest in, pine trees? The gods evolve because creation evolves. And if you check by reading historical evidence, but also, read up on if there's an animal that you see and you think that they might have a connection to a deity, read up on that animal. You might find something that makes a connection that you wouldn't have expected. Research and imagination opens many more doors than it closes, so don't be afraid to read and explore. Hopefully this will help you to analyze your own personal gnosis in your own tradition, your own UPGs, whether you're practicing as a Kemetic or a Wiccan or something else, and analyze them. Feel more confident about what's reliable and what might need to be taken with a grain of salt. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure you hit like, hit that subscribe button, there's links in the description, and give us a super thanks. And Kid Ptolemy might just do a super thank you happy dance just for you. You can also join our Patreon peeps, where we've got cool stickers and mini posters and t-shirts that are available throughout the year. And I put things like last month I had a pattern, and you should still be able to find it, pattern for doing altar decorations. And of course you get to see videos first through Patreon before it goes live onto YouTube, and then also you get outtakes and other exclusive content. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Senepti. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.